Hey guys, in this chapter, we're going to be looking at photosynthesis, and we're going to be applying a lot of the concepts we learned about in chapter 6 to the enzyme pathway of photosynthesis. I love this image. It's actually created by a student a couple years ago. Plants are going to be producing a bunch of our oxygen that we are going to have in our atmosphere, but we're going to be talking about why oxygen is a byproduct in this chapter. Now, within, you can see this image here. You can see the photosynthetic rates are very high around the equator. We're going to talk about why that's the case here in the next couple slides. But you can see that photosynthesis occurs pretty much everywhere on Earth. Two words that we have to know going forward, they should be a review here, are autotroph and heterotroph. Autotrophs are just organisms that make their own food. That's like the plants, algae, and bacteria that go through photosynthesis. Heterotrophs are like us. They consume other organisms for food, animals, fungi, and some bacteria. So just know those words going forward. So the first thing I would know is this equation for photosynthesis. You can see here 6 molecules of carbon dioxide plus 6 molecules of water. We're going to combine that with energy that we get from light. We're going to get sugar molecules or glucose, and we're going to get oxygen as well. I would memorize this equation just flat out. You're going to have to know this going forward. One thing you do want to understand here is we're going to see that those redox reactions come back from chapter 6 into these next two chapters. So you can see here the 6 CO2 are going to be reduced because they're gaining electrons. Now there's a lot going on here, but you can see just this molecule, we're going to gain hydrogens. Remember, when you gain hydrogens, you also technically gain electrons. So this molecule is being reduced. Over here, the water is being oxidized. We're losing that hydrogen. So we're going to be oxidized. Remember, oil rig. Oxidation is losing. Reduction is gaining. One of the things we're going to go over is the location on the plant where carbon dioxide is going to enter, and two of the outputs are going to leave here, at least one of the outputs. So stomata are these locations on the underside of leaves where CO2 is going to enter. So if you can imagine the plant not having a mouth like us, they have to intake CO2 in some way. Now, they're going to get that CO2 from the atmosphere, but it's going to enter the plant through these things called stomata. They're just openings within the plant that just allow them to intake CO2. Now, this CO2 enters through diffusion. What we're going to talk about next here is water and oxygen also leave the plant here. Now, again, don't think water is going to intake or come into these stomata. Water is going to leave, and we're going to see that be a problem later on in this chapter. Oxygen's also going to leave these locations as well. So this is where the oxygen is going to be exiting the plant, and it's where we then can breathe it in. The next concept we're going to go over are pigments and chlorophyll. Now, like in my last slide, I talked about how pigments are going to be molecules that just absorb certain wavelengths of light. You can see here, this pigment's going to absorb these wavelengths of light really well, but it's not going to absorb all wavelengths of light. So you can see some passing through. These pigments are going to act as solar panels in the photosystem, which is like a power plant or a solar power plant. So imagine these guys are just individual solar panels. They're going to absorb some wavelengths of light. And then you have the power plant, which is going to absorb a lot more than just the individual panels. We see a lot of chlorophyll in the plants today. There are other pigments like anthocyanins and carotenoids that do absorb other wavelengths of light, but chlorophyll is going to be the main wavelength of light that we see in plants that absorbs light. The next concept that we're going to go over in this first part of the chapter are chloroplasts. Now, we talked a little bit about chloroplasts back when we talked about them in, I think, chapter 4 and 5. We talked about organelles. First thing is, remember, these guys have two membranes. These were once their own free-living organisms, but through the endosymbiotic theory or endosymbiosis theory, they have two membranes. The outer one is more eukaryotic-like, and the inner one is more prokaryotic-like. The solution within the chloroplast is called the stroma. We have the thylakoids. These are like the pancakes or like the pennies, and they are where photosynthesis is going to occur. We have one specific part of photosynthesis that's going to occur in these thylakoids. A stack of those is called granum. The grana is the plural for many stacks. So again, you have to know the terminology here. So a thylakoid's one specific a disc. A granum is a stack of them, but when you have more than one stack of them, like you can see here, that's called grana. And then the lumen, that is the liquid inside of the thylakoids. Now remember, The liquid, the lumen, and the stroma are not just liquid. They have a ton of things going on inside them. There is a bunch of molecules, enzymes working, and we're going to talk about those next. All right, photosystems are next. These are going to be locations on the thylakoid membrane. These are membrane proteins, but there's a lot more that's going to go on here than what we've talked about in the past. Main thing is the analogy I give here is a great analogy. It's like a solar power plant. These photosystems are going to be locations where there's a bunch of pigment molecules, specifically chlorophyll, like which we're going to talk about next. These pigment molecules are going to absorb certain wavelengths of light, and they're going to transfer the energy that they absorb into electrons, and we're going to see these electrons be the passengers, or be the carriers, I should say, of the energy. Then there are two photosystems. We have PS1 and PS2. They look like this. You can see here two different photosystems. What I just want to show you is we have the membrane here. We have a bunch of these alpha helixes and beta plated sheets. I just want to show you the structure here. Don't memorize the structure. I just want to show you that they have a really cool structure. Our absorption spectrum is going to show us what type of light and how much light is going to be absorbed by plants. Now, again, these are just averages for most of plants, but what we see is we have a large absorption in the purples, in the blues, in the yellows, oranges, and reds, and not a lot of absorptions in the greens. The reason that we don't see a lot of absorption is in the greens. We have a couple of videos I'm going to show you during class, but this is why plants appear green. So the reason why plants appear green is that they don't absorb green light very well. They absorb all the other wavelengths really well except green. They're going to reflect that, and that's why, again, plants look green. Plants look green because the green light is reflected off of the plant and goes into our eyes then. So again, plants absorb lots of blues and purples, reds, oranges, and yellows, but not a lot of green. We'll talk about evolutionarily why that probably occurred. This is going to show you that there are other pigments within plants that we didn't talk about. We have the carotenoids, anthocyanins. I forget how you pronounce this one, but it absorbs our specific wavelengths, and it appears more yellowish. But you can see here again, there's a lot of different wavelengths of light. They all work together to absorb light. You can see this action spectrum right here.